Okay.
All
Well,
yours, Idske.
thanks, Andrew. Thanks very much. And also thanks to Sandra for giving Sjaak and myself the opportunity to present the current state of affairs on the E-CoC data exchange in Europe. I will first give a short introduction of myself. My name is Idske Dijkstra. I work for the Eucaris Secretariat, and I'm also Secretariat of E-Reg Topic Group 1 and 12. And besides that, I'm a senior advisor at RDW, the Netherlands Vehicle Authority. And the Netherlands was appointed, among others, by Eucaris to take care of for the IT platform Eucaris and the Secretariat of that platform on behalf of all the connected member states. I'm involved in international data exchange since 2003 now, and well, I hope I can give you some more information on the E-CoC data exchange. What are we going to demonstrate and present to you? First of all, I will give a short introduction on E-Reg. Then Sjaak, Manager Operations of Eucaris, will give an introduction on Eucaris. Then I will explain very briefly how it all started. That was already in 2011 that we started with the exchange of E-CoC data and thinking about the model, how it could work in Europe. Sjaak will then give an overview of the E-CoC and type approval data exchange as it should work. Then I give a current explanation on the timeline of the legislation. And Sjaak will close the presentation by giving an overview of the next steps and the implementation of the exchange model. But first, I think it's very important that you have knowledge of two abbreviations that will be used by Sjaak and myself in this presentation. First of all, it's the E-CoC. This is the name of the certificate of conformity as structured data in electronic format, so E-CoC. And this C-CoC is, oops.
Yep, I will get it back to you. Not sure why we're losing it. So
yeah, I'm also not sure. This E-CoC is actually exchanged throughout Europe via manufacturers to type approval authorities and registration authorities via the so-called IVI message. And IVI stands for Initial Vehicle Information. And that is the E-CoC, the first data set of a vehicle in its life cycle. So E-CoC is being transferred by the IVI message throughout Europe. Before we go into the technical details, I give a brief overview of what E-Reg is. E-Reg is the Association of European Vehicle and Driver Registration Authorities. RDW is one of them, but also KBA of Mr. Frank Wilkie is a member of E-Reg. And the E-Reg is an AISBL under Belgian law, and E-Reg is there to make it happen that policy is to be better executable, and at the end is also executed better. So there's a lot of communication with the European Commission. We exchange knowledge, experience, and best practice, all between us as registration and driver registration authorities. And one of the main goals is to promote effective and efficient data exchange. So there is a strong link with all the activities that Eucaris does. The organizational structure of E-Reg is in such a way that the members have all the saying. So every country has one vote. And under these E-Reg members, there is a secretariat, a chairman, and an advisory board. In this advisory board, there are some of the members that are a member of E-Reg. And under this construct, there are several topic groups in which topics that are of relevance for the members are being discussed. E-Reg also has an office, and this is situated in Brussels in Rue Forçard 95. So if you're in Brussels, please come along and grab a cup of coffee in the office. It's always possible. And also in this office, many times the topic groups gather. Currently, we have 5 topic groups up and running. The first one, and the oldest of all, is the topic group on international data exchange. And there is also the most important topic group now for today is topic group 12. This is the topic group on the CoC, the data exchange. We have also a series of previous topic groups, so I would suggest to go to the website of E-Reg and you can see what we did in the present. Who is a member of E-Reg network? Currently, the driver and vehicle registration authorities of 29 countries are part of this E-Reg network. And you can here see a slide with the registration and driver authorities that are actually acting in the advisory board, in the topic groups, etc. Besides members of the European member states, we have a lot of stakeholders that we are in contact with. Of course, the European Commission, but also ASEA is an important stakeholder. CETA is one of them, and United Nations, we have close contact with them as well. And last but not least, we have partner organizations where we drafted agreements with. First of all, there is an alliance with AMVA. AMVA is the umbrella organization of registration authorities for vehicles and drivers in the United States and Canada. We have an alliance with the same kind of umbrella organization in Australia, Austroads. We have an alliance with Sjaak on safety and driver testing, and an alliance with CETA, who is worldwide active in the field of vehicle compliance. And I think there is also questions in the chat, but I think we can cover that later on, Andrew.
Correct. Yeah, we'll do that in the Q&A session.
Yeah.
So okay. We would ask the group to hold on to the questions once we're in the Q&A mode.
Great. Well, this was a short introduction from my side, what E-Reg is all about, and I will now hand over my presentation to Sjaak. He will cover the introduction on Eucaris. Sjaak, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, a little introduction by myself on the next slide, I think. Is there a next slide?
Okay, you can click yourself if you want to. Yeah.
Oh, I can click myself. Okay.
Yes.
Well, my name is Sjaak Kempe. I am really an IT guy. I have been in IT for 25 years now. And I have also been involved in international data exchange for a long time, together with Idske and other colleagues. And besides, when I have some time off, I like to cycle a lot, and I like to play the game of bridge to keep my mind even sharper than it is. Now about Eucaris. Eucaris is really a cooperation of countries, a network, and there are 3 forms in which this cooperation is built. There is a piece of legislation called Eucaris, the Eucaris Treaty, and there is an organization called Eucaris. That's the cooperation of countries. And finally, and that's my basic occupation, that's the Eucaris application. So that's a piece of software. And I will say a little bit about all these three things. The legislation is the Eucaris Treaty. And this is really the basis for data exchange. And this is what started Eucaris originally already about 30 or even more years ago. And the Eucaris Treaty makes it possible to exchange vehicle information and driving license information. And the vehicle information, for instance, is also telling you if the registration of a vehicle is okay or not, if a vehicle has been reported stolen or scrapped, or you can see in all the European countries if a vehicle has been exported from one country to another. And so if you have a network, you can really track down a vehicle's whereabouts through all of Europe using Eucaris. And the same goes for driving licenses. You can track down driving licenses and people having driving licenses. Well, in this application and this legislation are actually expanded by implementing EU legislation into the same application Eucaris. And there are a number of legislations already implemented. So there is a part of technical vehicle data, but there is also legislation on that in which a vehicle owner information is exchanged. PRUM is about police cooperation, CBE is about traffic fines, VAT is about fraud with VAT on vehicles, and toll, well, I think you can guess that that's about collecting toll fees. And so there are a number of legislations in Eucaris, and also it's also possible to exchange data based on an agreement between two or more countries, and there are some agreements with an implementation in Eucaris as well. Then the organization, well, it's a network of authorities, mostly registration authorities, and they form a network, and they all gather once a year in a general assembly to decide about budget and maintenance and what actually should be done to maintain and develop Eucaris further. Well, this organization has a chairman, and the tasks of the organization are carried out by what we call a nominated party. So there is one country and organization nominating to do the tasks. The tasks for ICT are done by the Netherlands at RDW, and the Secretariat currently is also done by the Netherlands, the RDW. And while there are some rules in this organization described in the rules of procedure. Then the application, it's a bit funny. We usually describe the application by telling what it's not. Many people think that Eucaris will be some sort of database, but it's not. So there is not a database of E-CoCs in Eucaris. You can exchange E-CoCs using Eucaris, but the data is not in Eucaris itself. And the picture of the application actually shows how the connections are made. If two countries exchange information, they approach each other directly. So there is no central component in the application. It's all peer-to-peer, country to country. And also it's important to note that EU and Eucaris does not have anything to do with the EU, the European Union. It's not a system owned by the European Union. This system is owned by the member states that cooperate. So how is data exchange? What is the architecture of Eucaris? Basically, it's a generic framework for message exchange. And there are some generic capabilities that you need to be able to exchange. So authorization to check if country A is allowed to send a message to country B. Then security features like signing messages, encrypted transport. There's also an encrypted and trusted network involved in the communication. There is a logging facility within the framework, and there are fancy options to route messages. There is a facility to broadcast messages throughout the network. That's what we call MCI, multi-country inquiry. And there are some features to have a queue delivery and guarantee delivery, so that there's a retrial if things go wrong. And this generic framework is used to build on top of it specific services, all with their specific legal base. And you see a number of them, and one of them, EU Directive 218/858, that is the basis for CoC. That directive specifies the paper CoC now, and it also specified that there will be a digital CoC exchange as of 2026. Then it will be mandatory, and it's optional at the moment. And there are some other legislations, they are all listed over here. I did say something about them already, but these are all specific legislation with specific messages exchanged, defined in the legislation, and so you can, they are all independent of each other. So a member state can cooperate in one of these services, but also in all of these services. That's really up to the member state and the legal obligation that exists. So where it is used, well, to be short, this picture already tells it in all of the EU and a little bit more. That's basically where Eucaris is used. More than 40 connections already, and a large number of messages per year for quite some time now. Well, and then a little bit about the relationship between E-Reg and Eucaris. Well, E-Reg is about policy, so registration authorities discuss policies, execution of laws, problems with laws, best practices, and then Eucaris is really used to implement laws, so to implement international exchange, to implement the exchange of messages, and that member states can actually communicate with each other as is defined in the legislation. Now back to Idske.
Thanks, Sjaak. Then some words on how it all started. What I already told, that was it started already in 2011, because a lot of vehicle registration authorities based the registration of vehicles on type approval data, and based on type variant version. And that means that you have data ranges for vehicles, but actually you do not know the ranges or the unique values for one unique vehicle. It is not VIN based. So to switch from type approval data to CoC data, that was in those days quite an effort, because the CoC data was still on paper. And so those vehicle registration authorities that gathered, and they tried to solve the issue that they didn't have exact data at that time. So there was a E-Reg conference in May 2011, and the decision was made to set up a special topic group specially dedicated to the CoC data exchange, and then in such a way that at the end the model of data exchange also should be included in legislation. And together with E-Reg, also a cooperation started with TAM, with the type authority with the type approval authorities. And those authorities in those days and still are collecting their thoughts within the TAM, the Type Approval Authorities meeting, and Topic Group 12 and the top as a cooperation between E-Reg and between TAM. The group had his first kick-off meeting at the end of 2011, and a few countries grouped together. And currently we have all 25 active members. You can see the nominees on the left side of the PowerPoint. The reading members are currently Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Slovenia. They are not very actively involved, but the active members are. And the topic group currently is also open for umbrella organizations like ASEA, ASEM, and AVERE. Also, the European Commission is now involved in this topic group, and DG Grow and DG Klima is currently a reading member. So the group already is on its way for 13 years now, and yeah, eventually the model is now there, and Sjaak will tell something about that. Sjaak?
Okay. Yeah, now it's really getting interesting. So I will say some basics, and then I will show a picture to make it all clear, as I hope. So how is the model? Each type approval authority ultimately shall have its own E-CoC register, or at least shall be able to receive digital CoCs. The manufacturers are supposed to send the E-CoC to a type approval authority after the production has been, after the vehicle has been produced. This is pretty much the same as the paper CoC right now. And I will say a little bit more about sending the E-CoC and distributing this E-CoC in the picture. And there's also a task of the type approval authority to make this E-CoC available, actually also to the registration authorities that need them to register vehicles, but also make the CoC available to the public. The details of this are not really clear yet in the legislation, but well, there is an obligation to make that work. Vehicle registration authorities are supposed to use E-CoCs for vehicle registration. This is an optional thing now. The Netherlands already uses E-CoCs for, I think, 7 years now, and Germany also uses E-CoCs. And I think there are a number of countries in Europe that can receive E-CoCs. I will go on a little bit about that in the next slides. But in receiving the E-CoC, the vehicle registration authorities have some options. So they can request E-CoCs when they need them, but they also can get them forwarded. And there is a sort of a subscription mechanism. They can choose to get E-CoCs forwarded if the intended country of registration specified in the E-CoC is the wrong country. It's also possible to have a subscription on all, and actually it's also possible to have a subscription on intended registration country not specified. So then it could be a CoC that's meant for you, but you're not really sure about that. And there is a forwarding mechanism possible to the type approval authority. So the E-CoC has a type approval mark in it, and the E-CoC can be forwarded to that type approval authority. And this is a picture of the model. At the top side, there are manufacturers, and in this picture there are 3 of them. And there is a tunnel or a connection via internet to an authority that is able to receive an E-CoC. And you see in this picture, there are 2 authorities able to receive an E-CoC. And there's also a third authority in this picture that is able to receive E-CoCs, but does not have an entry point for manufacturers. So this is all possible at the moment. Some authorities are able to receive E-CoCs, others only retrieve E-CoC from others. That's the current situation. So the country in the middle could be Germany, and the country on the right side could be the Netherlands. These 2 countries at the moment are able to receive E-CoCs from manufacturers. And for instance, the country on the left could be Latvia, is able to retrieve E-CoCs. The registration authority can do that and can use the E-CoC for registration, but Latvia for now has not an E-CoC database and an entry point for manufacturers. And so the intention of this model, and I go to the next slide then, for the manufacturer, there is really a choice where to deliver its E-CoC. Any authority with an access point can be used to receive, to send an E-CoC to. There should be no wrong door, as we call it, because Eucaris can distribute the E-CoC to the rest of the network. So the model allows a manufacturer to really choose where to deliver. So it can choose to deliver all its E-CoCs to one and the same access point for convenience. It can also switch between access points. It can use access point B if access point A is not available. All of these things are possible because there's Eucaris in the background, and the E-CoC can always be delivered to the type approval authority or to the registration authority, and it is also always possible to retrieve it. Then something about manual input. The large manufacturers with the type approvals, with the big number of vehicles, they should submit electronically, but there is a provision in the legislation. If the type approval is meant to produce small series, it should be possible to use a manual upload tool or input tool. This tool is not available at the moment, but we as Eucaris will be developing one, and the intention is to have it available September 2025 in the network. And this will be some sort of client application. You can request access to it at a type approval authority. For instance, a type approval authority you are dealing with for type approvals the most. And this type approval authority then will be able to give you access to a web client facility made by Eucaris. And this will allow you to either type in the CoC data or to upload it, probably in a CSV file format. We have not yet thought about all the details, but that is something that the legislation says should be available and that we will provide for you. This is a bit of an overview of all the components in the network. So on the left-hand side, we have a manufacturer who should have a signing certificate, because E-CoCs should be signed in an electronic way. And there's usually also a certificate needed for transport, because this internet connection between manufacturer and IVI server, so that's the access point for E-CoCs, that should be secured. And this is usually done by a certificate. But there are multiple ways of authentication that could be used. Currently, the Netherlands and Germany both use class 3 signing certificates. And you see the manufacturer delivered is E-CoC. I think there is an envelope with the little legs. That's the IVI message. And actually, this is a slide with animations, but it does not work in this setting. But if I were to switch on the animation, then this E-CoC would walk into the portal of the receiver and then into Eucaris, and then it will walk to the other EU countries. That's basically the exchange model. So the manufacturer submits it at an access point, and then it's just distributed into the network. And then on the right side, there is actually a storage of E-CoC. So the storage is not done in Eucaris itself. I already said Eucaris is no database. The storage is done at type approval authorities and registration authorities. Well, and another element in this picture, but it's a little bit small, is checking. The CUC is checked when you submit it. Of course, there's an XSD check. That's a pretty straightforward technical check. But there is also a plausibility check. In this picture, you see PCM, plausibility check module. And this really checks if the data is consistent. So for instance, if you have a person's car, you are supposed to provide 2 axles. Otherwise, it's wrong. It's no person's car. And if you provide a trailer, well, you cannot provide an engine, for instance. Checks like that are done by the plausibility check module. And actually, current practice is that about 90% of E-CoCs delivered now are correct and about 10% are wrong. So that's really a substantial percentage. So it's really, well, it's not that easy to provide a correct E-CoC. That's basically the lesson. So what is done in Eucaris as functionality? I put it in a little overview. So it's possible to retrieve an E-CoC. For instance, you are a registration authority and there is a request for a license plate. Then you retrieve the E-CoC from the network wherever it is located. You can actually search for the E-CoC in all of the network, or you can specifically denote one database. It's possible both. Then there is a forwarding option. So the E-CoC arrives at one entry point and is forwarded to another address, like the type approval authority that is responsible for it, or a registration authority with a subscription. Then there are possibilities to validate an E-CoC against the type approval on which it is based. There is message exchange for that in the network. And finally, it is possible to submit corrections. I already said 90% of the E-CoCs are right and 10% are wrong, but there's also a certain percentage where the correction is in fact, the need for a correction is discovered after the E-CoC has already been submitted. And in that case, if an entry point receives a corrected E-CoC, there is a notification going out into the network, because this E-CoC may have been used already by someone, for instance, for registration. And if there is a correction, it could be that this affects the registration, or at least you don't know. So we send out a correction notification into the network, and the stakeholders receive it and are able to do a little impact assessment if this correction is relevant for them or not. For instance, if there is a correction and it's something about, well, a new set of tires, for instance. Most registration authorities do not really care about that because they do not register the tires in the vehicle database, and they do not put tire information on registration documents, etc. But if there is something that corrects the mass of the vehicle or the power, that could have an effect on what is printed on the registration document. So then it is relevant, and it could even affect the amount of tax to pay, and then registration authorities really think it's relevant. So that's an example of corrections, and if they are relevant or not for the stakeholders. Well, back to Idske for a little bit on timeline.
Yeah, the legislation, it of course all started with the publication of the 2018 858 in 2018. Since then, 2 implementing acts have been written, and based on the legislation, the timeline is now as follows: that for manufacturers and the abandonment of the paper CUC, that part should be migrated to the E-CoC on the 5th of July 2026. Until then, it is already possible to use the E-CoC format, but as from 5 July 2026, it's mandatory. But before that, on 1 September 2025, type approval authorities should be ready to receive already E-CoCs if manufacturers are going to deliver them. So the reception should already be ready as from September 2025. And the exchange between the authorities should be ready also in 2026. What have we done between the 2018 858 publication and until now? The first implementing act has been adopted and published. In this implementing act, it has been included that Eucaris is the exchange mechanism between the authorities. There is a conclusion on the E-CoC that should be in a uniform way in XML structure and in XML technology. That for the E-CoC exchange, the IVI message should be used, and that there should be a timeline always kept in the back of the head that you may have only 2 changes a year. This first implementing act was published at the 1st of January 2023, or went into force on the 1st of January 2023. Then the European Commission has worked quite hard on the second implementing act. The number of this implementing act was just released, and this implementing act will apply as from the 5th of July 2025. In this implementing act, the requirements are being included for the secure data exchange, and it also describes the access to the public of the CoC information. This should be a responsibility of the type approval authority. However, there is now really no detail in this implementing act, so it's still very vague. And we are currently busy as E-Reg Stocker Group 12 to deliver some kind of guidance document that the type approval authorities know how to handle this. And also for some other topics, it is still quite vague. It's not clearly described in the legislation how the exchange of the data should work. So also, all those white spots, so to say, in the legislation will be described in this guidance document. And this guidance document will be drafted together with the members in the forum, and also together with the motor vehicle working group and the Technical Committee on Motor Vehicles. Let's see. The next steps now is that, it's very important to have these white spots filled in. We are also busy to work on the validation of the E-CoC against the type approval data, so that the CoC data is even of a more higher quality. And we are currently discussing the change procedure also on the legislation, because the E-CoC legislation to change the E-CoC and the IVI message, this change procedure is not working very harmoniously. So the communication between the European Commission Forum and DG Grow, DG Climate, all the different DGs, they can have ideas about changes in the IVI, and sometimes these changes are not very coordinated. So we plea for a better change procedure, also where that Eucaris is involved in a better way. And perhaps there will be even a third implementing act. We are currently writing this guidance document, but in the end it could be decided that it could be wise to have this also clearly stated in another part of legislation. We will have the coming years a lot of meetings of Topic Group 12. The last one was last week in Helsinki, and the next one will probably be in October. And to work on the further detailing, not only technically, but also on the legal side. Sjaak, what will be the next steps on the technical part?
Yeah, so we have done quite a lot already, but we have to do many things still. These are the connected countries right now. And this is not all of the EU, as you can see, not by any chance. So we still have about 20 countries to connect to the international exchange. I must say there are countries on this picture that do have a CoC database already. I know France has one and Italy has one, but up until now they have not connected this database to the rest of the EU. So you can send E-CoCs to France, but France cannot distribute them to other countries at the moment. And the law says that they should, so at some point they will have to connect their database to the other databases. That's what the legislation said. So as Eucaris, we expect about 20 countries applying to us with a solution to receive E-CoCs or to retrieve E-CoCs, and then we do an acceptance test with them, and then we hope we can connect them. Currently, we are working on some countries, and we have had quite a few interested countries in early stages of the project. I think we had 4 or 5 of them in the last 3 months. So countries are really working on the E-CoC at the moment. And there is still some time, of course, another 2 years before it all will be mandatory according to legislations. Type approval authorities actually should be ready in September 2025 to receive E-CoCs. So manufacturers can provide E-CoCs now to the Netherlands and Germany, but should provide E-CoCs in 2026, and then they don't have to provide paper basically anymore. And registration authorities also should switch. Most of them use the paper CoC now. Some of them already use the E-CoC, but registration authorities will have to make this switch from paper to digital in the next few years. And well, I already said many countries have visited us or inquired us about the implementation. Well, some challenges. Well, one challenge definitely is that the legislation changes all the time. New items on the paper COC and also in the digital COC about 2 times a year or 3 times a year. So there are new versions, and these versions should remain compatible to each other. Up until till now, all versions are compatible, but the working group is working on a very new version of the IVI message and also the E-CoC 2.0, and this one will not be compatible to the 1.x versions. This because the 1.x version has existed for 8 or 9 years now, and there is really some technical debt in it, fields that are no longer used, some errors in field explanations, and 2.0 will be better, but it will not be compatible. But no worries, you can use the 1.x version if you use it today, and you can keep on using. And these two versions will coexist for a few years. So if there's an update in the legislation, it will be applied to both the 2.x format, which of course will change over time. If we introduce 2.0, it will probably last 6 months, and then there will be 2.1 and 2.2, etc. And the 1.x version will change with the 2.x version for a period of time, not yet decided how long. A particular problem or a particular challenge, multi-stage vehicles. I think I already saw a question about this one in the chat. It's really difficult to combine COCs of multi-stage vehicles for a registration because each of them only contains part of the data, and then it's particularly difficult to combine because, for instance, if stage 1 specifies 3 axles and stage 2 specifies 2 axles, what has happened then? Is one axle gone, or is one axle changed? Is the third axle that is specified, is it deleted or is it unchanged? Challenges like this really are difficult. And well, actually the opinion of the E-Reg-TAM working group is that the current legislation, where the completed stage does not contain all the complete COC, actually is too difficult. So the working group thinks we need a legislation change at some point here, that at least the COC that completes the vehicle should have a complete data set to make this all more easy. But of course, at the moment, there is no obligation to provide the complete data set, and then the registration authority will have to do tricks to combine COCs. Well, another challenge, I already said, manufacturers should be able to deliver at every access point. So this means that the conditions for delivery should be the same at each access point as well. And well, this means that if you have done a test with one access point, this should be good enough actually to make you deliver to that access point, but also to others. And if there is a lack of harmonization in these acceptance procedures, then this could be a problem. And of course, the versions could also be a problem. If there is one access point which does not support the latest version, while another access point does, it could cause problems. So these are challenges. And then finally, well, the data quality sometimes is an issue. I already said, well, not all COCs are without errors. There are corrections needed, and validations are not completely in place. so that there is some work to do to improve the data quality. And there are some security measures already used. The digital signature, I think, is an important one to really prove that the CoC has come from the manufacturer, and it proves that it is not altered by someone in the transport or somewhere in the network. Well, the technical checks improve data quality. Specifically, this plausibility control module actually is a very good tool to improve quality. And I think a good thing is that we are working on a version that is cloud-based. So you can use it as a test tool if your CoC is okay. You just send your E-CoC to some address in a cloud where there is a web service or something. And this web service then will say to you, well, this one is okay, or this one is not okay. And then it will also, of course, say something what is wrong. And I think that's a very good tool to improve the quality in the future. And the type approval check, already mentioned by Idske. Not many countries are able to offer one now, but we are working on that also to get this at a higher level. And I think that's what I had to say at the moment. Andrew.
Thank you very much. Like I said, we will get into the questions after Mr. Wilkie was able to present, so maybe some of that gets answered. So thank you both. It was very, very interesting. I also have a couple of questions maybe I'll get to at the end, but I think you also answered a lot of questions. So thank you so much. Before we go and have Mr. Wilkie do a presentation, we would like to do a quick poll with you, and I'd like to hand over to Paulina.
Should be working. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Idske, and thank you, Sjaak. I will switch on a survey, and I would like to invite all of the attendees to answer to 2 questions related to e-registration. You should see the questions now on your screen. And the first one is, which companies in the audience sent already today E-CoCs to an authority? And the second question is a multiple choice version of a question. And you can answer, if you already sent E-CoCs to an authority, how do you manage today's sending of E-CoCs?
Yeah, so I see we have a little mistype. So we don't mean EU authority, we mean national, those TAMs which you're sending E-CoCs to.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll wait for you guys to finish the poll, and we are at about 30-40% only, right, Paulina?
Yes, the answers are still coming, so we'll wait a little bit, and in a while I will close the survey and I will show to you all the results of this voting. But since the answers are still coming, let's wait a little longer. Okay. Oh no, still coming.
Yep, still coming.
So let's wait a little longer. So the possible choices for the question number 2 of how you can, how do you, in case you submit E-CoCs, how do you do it? So you can use a manual process. You can be using a purchased software tool to do that. You can be sending E-CoCs using a government-provided software tool, or you might have a custom one, or you're just using a service provider.
Okay, Paulina, I think the numbers are not increasing anymore. So
yeah, so I'm finishing the survey, and these are the results.
okay, so we have from the audience, we have about 1/3 who are not sending yet, and 13 out of the 65, 20% are sending already today.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are using either a purchase tool or a custom made or a service provider. So I would say that would be the answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm closing the survey and I'm handing over to you